Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we've got the Week 0 power rankings for the TCG Matchmaking ranked ladder for the OP10 meta of the One Piece card game. Now, a couple things before we get started. First, I am on the road. I'm actually in Japan right now. So, they've blown past OP10 as a meta, right? We've got Worlds this upcoming weekend as well. And we also have a restriction list that's being announced this Sunday, Japanese time, which is likely going to affect us in our OP10 meta. So this is really just a cursory glance of what the beginning parts of this meta is. I also know that OP10 is just releasing right now in North America too, so that makes a big difference. And it's more just kind of looking at some stuff as we get into some probably uncertain waters, right? With the likelihood that the restriction list is happening for us in OP10, that helps. But some ideas, what's going to get hit. I know a lot of people are saying like Doflamingo is still very strong, which we'll see in a little bit, but it's going to be some really exciting times, I think, as well. So we're going to go over, if you guys want more content for the One Piece card game, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and make sure to check out my website, Eggman Events. We have over 100 deck lists for the current OP10 meta right now on the site. We're going to be updating it with any changes that happen with any restriction list stuff, and we also have a lot of tournaments, including some results for future ones and ones that were coming up for us in the North American version as well. So we're going to check this out. I also do want to shout out TCG Matchmaking for making this effort and going for it. And let's just look at the power rankings in general. So specifically for these ones, these are the leaders for it. It's kind of a system based on not only the win rate for the deck, but also based kind of on the matches for it. So shoutouts also to Sakura Kingdom, who does make a lot of content here on YouTube as well. It's his system for the rankings for it. I really like how they do it, and I really appreciate all their hard work for it. So first place, we've got Doflamingo. Second, we've got Shanks. Third, we've got Zoro. Fourth, we've got Bonnie. Fifth, we have Luffy. Sixth, we have Teach. Seventh, we've got Smoker. Eighth, we got Usopp. Ninth, we've got Stardeck. 13, Luffy. And 10th, we've got Eustace Captain Kidd. And the first thing that I see, which kind of blows my mind, is like the first time since OP7 releases, we don't see Rob Lucci. Rob Lucci's not in this top 10, which I think is a little wild since it's been really, really dominant for a lot of its life in this card game. OP09, I think towards the end of it, it was dwindling a little bit, but still really relevant in its own ways. And to see just it not being part of this, I thought was really remarkable in its own way. Obviously, Doflamingo is still very strong. We're going to see all the deck lists for the top winning rate deck list for each one of these leaders in a little bit too, but spoilers, Doflamingo doesn't really change that much. Zoro as well is an interesting one. I do think like Stardeck 21 is pretty strong with some good red tools, so we definitely take advantage of that in Shanks and Zoro, but also our new leader, which is the Smoker from OP10. We do also have Teach getting a lot of new cards to help us out. It does have like a 50% win rate on the ladder, but I also think that's a little bit due to it being the most popular leader in this this matchup chart right now with over 5,000 games. And because of that, I think more people are just trying it out. It's a new meta. And Teacher's definitely a leader that you can't kind of half commit to. You kind of have to full commit to if you want to be really successful with it. And because of that, there's a lot of people, I think, who are trying it out, finding out some issues with it or some difficulties with the leader. So I'm not too surprised that it's a lower win percentage rate, just because I think there's a lot more people who are on it. And that means there's a lot of good people, but a lot of people who are trying it out at the same kind of time too. So, and then for our new leaders, we don't have anything within the top 5 for it, but Smoker, Usopp, and Eustace Captain Kidd, I think are the 3 better leaders from this set. We also have like Law, Sugar, and also Caesar Clown, which I don't think any of those 3 are going to be doing as well. And also people are testing out Law still. I think Sugar's a really cool red and purple leader, but I think that's fine. And then we got Stardeck 13 Luffy, which that deck is still really good. We've got it 50% win rate, but not a lot of people are testing it right now. And this is kind of a cursory glance of, again, this kind of meta. So this is very volatile. We'll see what changes with it, but interesting to see what the first couple of days of this really looks like. And then also we got a matchup chart. I'm not going to really go through any of these specifically, but this kind of gives you a kind of a sense of what these matchups look like. Obviously, we've got Doflamingo, which only typically has a bad matchup into the Usopp and also the Luffy, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but generally speaking, a very strong deck. We have Teach still, which honestly, like a 40% loss rate to Dofi is a lot better to where it was like almost like 25 to 30%. So it's still a rough matchup for you, but it is something way more obtainable. Other than that, most decks are pretty okay with you. Zoro, Zora, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is a tough matchup, and it does have some pretty good matchups across the board. Only bad one being Doflamingo. So if we're seeing Doflamingo potentially getting hit in our restriction list, Zora might just be a really good aggressive deck that gets to breathe due to Doflamingo not being around anymore. And then we just have a little bit more of our new stuff, right? So we got Smoker, which is having like a 50th percent matchup against Shanks, rough matchup into the Doflamingo potentially, but then it seems like it has a pretty good matchup across the board from there. We also have Bonnie, which is not doing great into, actually it's fine, right? Like it's like negative, but not truly negative for probably 3 of the more popular leaders in this game, but it does have a good matchup spread across there. We also do have like Usopp, which I'm curious to see how this does throughout the meta in general. I know this was hyped up as a leader. It's a blue-black leader, which was, a banned leader color previously in this game. So I'm curious to see if there is a way for it to be good. It does have a good matchup into Dofi, but it does have some issues into Shanks a little bit. It looks like Blackbeard is like a 50-50 thanks to like the gear for Luffy that's been very strong. And I'm curious to see how it goes from there. And then we've got Kid, which has like a lot of like, it's pretty polarizing for his matchups, right? Being able to be very aggressive and successful with it. Like anything with 4 or less life, you have a really good time because you can't do a lot of damage to it. Smoker is really tough because you have a hard time doing that last damage from my experience. Bonnie the same kind of way with green just being really defensive. And especially like if you're playing against a deck that can establish 8-drop Kid and protect it very successfully, I think, ironically, Yellow Kid has a hard time answering it. So that's kind of just my thoughts going over these real quick, but you can check that out in your own time as well. And then we're just going to quickly look at the deck list. So again, these are the highest win rate deck lists for each one of these leaders based on the rank ladder. And some of these I'm going to go through very quickly. You guys know what Doflamingo looks like at this point, right? It has been essentially the same deck list for almost half a year, give or take a couple cards, right? But this deck is strong. I don't think there's anyone arguing it at this point. I know a lot of people are saying that there's a card that's going to be hit. If I was to say a last-minute prediction, since we are getting a restriction list soon, it's either going to be Teach, it's going to be Boa Hancock, or it's going to be Jinbei. Those are the 3 that I'm choosing. We'll see what they decide, but I think one of those 3 are likely going to get hit. I don't know if the leader's going to get hit. I'd be very surprised if it did, but that's my last thoughts for it. So not much more to say. We'll see if we have Doflamingo in our OP10 format at the same rate as we've been seeing. And then we have Shanks, and Shanks has been doing, getting a lot of different reps of different styles. I do think that the red package of cards that we get from OP10 is generally pretty good. There's a lot of good staple-like cards for the deck. For example, we do have the Sanji, which we'll talk about this card more of a Smoker, but the fact that this is a 3-drop 6K offensively that also draws a card if they try to KO it, it's just great. Like there's so many good things about this card. The fact that it's also Straw Hat Crew is fantastic. It works again really well in Smoker, and I think this card is fantastic for most red decks, including also the Tony Chopper. This is like probably one of, if not the best new generic red 2Ks in the game right now. The fact that it's a 4-drop 6K blocker on defense, the fact that it's a 2K in hand, there's just so much to love about this card, and just how good it is for being a last-minute defense if you really need that kind of thing to happen. So really like this card. I think it's been really strong, and especially within like Shanks, right? Like you can block, and then it gets a -1K for like a 6K if you need to. There's a lot of great ways for this to be a really good defensive tool that you don't have to really invest a lot of effort into, and also is a 2K as well. And then lastly, we'll talk about this card, I think, in a couple other decks too. But Star Deck 21 Luffy the leader, I don't think is super great, but this is a fantastic card for a lot of decks. So Rush, and then 1 attack and give up to 1 Rested Dawn to your leader or one of your characters. So that means that you do obviously get like an aggressive edge on play. Attacking, you can make it a 5-drop 7K, but there are some decks that care about having a Dawn underneath the leader. So this being able to apply it on the turn you play it, I think is really handy. So Shanks isn't one of them, but it is a good aggressive card. So it looks like we're more of an aggressive lead with this build for it, but I think Shanks is just generically the best, one of the best red decks in the game right now. We're also going to talk about Zora, which has consistently been in a lot of metas since release, but I do think it's a strong pick for this meta still. So there it is. And then Zora, right? So if we do have like a little bit more of like defensive proper capabilities with Shanks, this one obviously is still the same low to the ground deck that we've been seeing essentially since launch of this card game over 2 years ago. So we're still using the animal package, which this card is still really, really good and worth building a deck around, in my opinion. the fact that this can pretty easily put 2 bodies on the board that Zoro can boost up very quickly is great. Luffy being able to, on attack, so if you're at 5 Dawn, you could play this attack with it. You get to put the Dawn underneath your leader, so this is still a 5-drop 7k attack, but then you can boost up all your 4k choppers and other animals to be able to attack on the same turn, so that's very strong if you're able to pull that off. And obviously, like, this deck does have issues against Doflamingo, so they can just kind of interact with Chopper and put out as many boards or cards on board as you can and get more value for it. But otherwise than that, I think Zoro is a good pick for this early meta. It might be a little bit tough for this deck to continue to be around when people kind of figure out how they build their decks. On it, like, Zoro's always going to be really strong in the first couple weeks of a meta, and we've seen this in the past couple metas because people are playing like suboptimal decks or they're trying to still figure out the meta. So when you're playing against, as something that's super hyper aggro and doing, a lot of attacks in the same turn, you really get to punish decks that kind of brick up or don't have any counter in hand either. So I think Zoro's going to be present. It's going to be interesting to see how present it is. And I doubt any of these cards are going to get hit on the restriction list. So that's a minorly good, investment if you guys are trying to play this card game for the first time. But it's in a good spot, and here's Zoro. The next up, we've got Bonnie, and Bonnie's been like just around, right? Since OP10, Lucci's probably been one of the most consistent decks from there when it comes to topping and winning and just being at events. Bonnie is like the second most, and it's been like the best like generic green leader we've had in a really long time. And we do get to take advantage of 2 new cards that we get from this set. So we do have the Smoker, this being able to be a 5-drop 7k. The fact that you get a Dawn active at the end of your turn with the activate main effect is fantastic because it does kind of turn into a secondary copy of Cavendish, right? There's so many games where you need your Cavendish to be on the board to be able to get your 1 Dawn for your leader effect every turn and be kind of aggressive. It also means you can play something for 10 and get their effects. So like Cavendish has been really good. So Smoker being a backup copy of that is really good. But then also the Tashigi. So this is a 2k, which is already fantastic. But when one of your green characters other than Tashigi would be removed from play during your opponent's effect, you may play this you can rest this character instead. So it just means that you get to play a really strong game of defend 8-drop kid. We'll talk about the Smoker leader in a bit too, which is also really good at playing that same game. So, between having copies of Rosinante and Tashigi, 8-drop kid is really difficult for most decks to interact with, outside of, I think, red, where they can do a lot more cost reduction, which is really strong. So we'll see kind of how obnoxious Bonnie is going to be, but I think this is the best it's really been in a long time. There's going to be a lot of people on it, at least more people than average on it, and it's going to be a big threat in this meta too. So I don't have much more to say because it's really the same package, but Tashigi and Smoker, I think, really helps us out. And the fact the meta kind of is rough into what we want to do, I think helps Bonnie in a lot of ways. So there it is. Next up, we got Purple Luffy, which it's kind of surprising to see this deck, still around in pretty much the same capacity, right? Like, Luffy's has been pretty much the same since, OPO 8.5. We did get some cards from OPO 9 that we added, right? We added the Sanji, right? We added the, and that's really it, right? Some people are playing like the Sanji and the Secret Rare Luffy, right? Those are the 2 more important cards for us. This is the fact that we have more cards with Rush that let us, take advantage of us being aggressive, taking cards aggressively from our life. And it's generally been really strong. It's hard to answer this. Sometimes Lucci can get like an Ice Age to get rid of Luffy Taro. Sometimes that like Dofi just is better and they don't have to go down to 0 life to do so. But generally speaking, I think this deck is still in a really good spot. I've been playing in Japan for the last couple days, so I've been seeing a lot more of the purple-green Luffy and also the purple and blue Luffy. So this thing is a thing of a past based on my recent testing, but it's still really strong. There's no real changes you make with OP10 cards, but you are very aggressive, and if you have a really good start, most decks really can't answer it very effectively either. So I don't have much more to say, but here is the purple Luffy. The next up, we got Teach, which is going to be, I think, one of the cornerstones of the format, assuming nothing restriction list really affects it. But I do think that this is a really, really strong deck, mostly just because of one card, right? One card got added in OP10, and it really takes advantage of it, is the Kuzan. So the fact that this cannot be removed by effects in general is obnoxious. The fact that you can activate main, trash this character, draw a card, and then play a Blackbeard character with cost of 5 or less other than Kuzan from your trash is fantastic. There have been some times where I'm like, well, I could play Von Augur early, but like I don't get the effects from it, and it's kind of like in a bad spot. But we can use our Kuzan to convert into Von Augur if we need the removal or like the reduction. We can also convert it into a copy of like sometimes I've even seen people use it for Doc Q just because they need that removal, but obviously the best target has been the Jesus Burgess. So being able to use this to get into our cards so we don't have to spend time like awkwardly playing it in a time where they can't really interact with it. And, if you're playing it's like Trafalgar Law from Dofi to bounce this back, like this card just kind of sits there. You can make it so it's kind of awkward for them. And then you can be able to play this out too. So we do have a couple other new cards though, including the Shiru. So this is a rare. Opponent's turn, this character gets plus 2k power for the turn. And activate main. Once per turn, if your leader has Blackbeard type and this character is played on this turn, KO up to one of your opponent's character's base cost of 3 or less. So just really turns like this Kuzan into like a toolbox of being able to get some removal if you need to, which is really nice. We also do have like the Liberation. This card's really strong for being able to get some wider boards, which is great. And then we have the rest of the thing. So honestly, I'd be curious to see if this deck gets restricted, because really like the most broken thing about the deck is the leader, right? And like the 10 drop, right? That interaction can be really strong. I do hear a lot of people talking about hitting a restriction with full ed, which I honestly wouldn't be too upset with. I do think like hitting the consistency of this deck a little bit would make it a little bit trickier for you to consistently get there and make it a little bit more decision based on what you see for it. So that could maybe happen. I'm not really sure for it, but this is a really strong deck. You do still have to, I think, fully commit to playing this deck in the first place. But if you do, you will get rewarded in being able to interact with a lot of different decks. So if Doflamingo gets hit and this deck doesn't get hit, I think this is probably one of the bigger winners for it. But we'll see if that's true as well. Next up, we got Smoker. So this is our first new leader that we're talking about today. But this leader is really, really strong at being able to get a lot of value. I think there's a lot of different ways to build this too. This is generically what I've been seeing more often, where it's more of like the Punk Hazard type, where we're also having like a good top end of having like the Ben Beckman, also the Hody, as well as the Eustace Captain Kidd. This deck is really, really good at playing Defend the 8-drop Kidd, especially since on 8 Dawn we can play it. We are able to untap 2 with our leader effect, since we do get to untap 2 as long as we have a character with 7k or more power. Doesn't even have to be original power, it's just 7k or more power. So on like 4 Dawn, you can do something where you can play Sanji, put 1 Dawn underneath it, it's a 7k, and you get 2 Dawn back, which is really, really strong. So other than that, I really do like this leader. This is probably my favorite leader from this set based on current testing with it. I think there's, again, a lot of different ways to play it too. But this is generically what I think a lot of other people are playing with it. So we also have 10-layer Igloo. This card is fantastic, being able to be like a plus 5k, and also there are some ways to be able to get out of some things. Also currently and also in future metas, being able to give something minus 2k for the turn is really, really helpful for making it so you don't get hit by... There's going to be a lot more things that attack more than once. So that helps you, specifically like the purple Luffy from the purple-green Luffy. And then the Gum Gum Mulgun. I really like this card. This card's been really strong for me in my own testing. Being able to get rid of a 7k is great. But also the fact that like we are so flexible with our Dawn. There are some times where I'm like, well, I have 5-drop Smoker on the board, so I'm going to play this for 4, but then I get 3 Dawn back off my leader effect and my Smoker effect. So 1 Dawn to get rid of a 7k or less is insane. And then obviously if we have like Otama, or we have like a copy of Monet, we can either use one of these other cards to be able to get things into range for our removal too. So I think Smoker is good. I think it's a moderately safe investment if you guys are looking into the future of this meta, since I don't think anything's going to get hit. If anything's going to get hit, it's going to be 8-drop Kidd, which I know some people have been complaining about, but I don't think it's been. I don't think this card is going to get hit, but I have been seeing some people talk about it, so we'll see. But here's Smoker. The next one we got Usopp, which again I talked about it. This deck's really peculiar with how it deals with its card advantage and how it plays. It doesn't have like a lot of inherent removal compared to like something like Sakazuki. We can play Houndblaze if we want to, and there might exist a build in the future that builds off of like more like the Navy stuff. But honestly, Usopp really just kind of thrives within its own archetype, being able to give its own cards +1 cost, but also being able to just get a draw whenever a Dressrosa type character is removed by an effect or KO'd, which is really strong. So we do have our good stuff. Like we got Leo being able to get our card draw. We also do have like the Zoro here being able to get a removal by resting the Sage, or also your leader if you need to. There's a lot of the stuff that can work for the Rebecca leader that we got from OP10, but we don't see that as often as I think this. The new Kyros is really good too, being able to get rid of a 5 or lower and also be a 7-drop 9k. I've been also seeing this pop up in Blurple Luffy out here in Japan, which is really interesting. We also have the Monkey D. Luffy 7-drop, which I've been kind of back and forth if I like this card or not. I think it's fine, and like it being able to attack the turn it's played pretty actively is great. We don't put as many cards into our trash compared to other black decks, so that is a real big resource for us if we want to use the effect or not. Then obviously the new Rebecca being able to play 2 bodies, even though it's from hand, is good because we do get the better card draw from our leader as long as those, our hand size is low enough too. So other than that, I think Usopp is interesting. You do have to be kind of active on where your blocks are and how you're interacting with your opponent compared to, I think, like other decks, and like your opponent can give you a lot of free value if they kind of attack in like a weird way or let you get your blocks or your KOs to get where you need to go. But Usopp's really cool. I want to spend more time kind of building the deck and figuring out my favorite build as it is. But this is a really good deck, and I hope to see more of it in the future. We've got 2 more left. One of them is the Stardeck 13 Luffy. You guys know what this deck looks like, right? It's been pretty much this for a while. There have been a lot of text coming and going with this, right? And in this build specifically, we see like the Shirahoshi blocker. We have the Kingdom Come. We also have like the newest tech for the deck, which is the Capone Gang Beige. So on play, you can add 1 life from the top of your bottom of your deck to your hand, then add up to 1 Supernova type character from your hand to the top of your life face up. So this really lets you just put any of your 5-cost Luffys, since they are both Supernovas, which are, sorry, this one's not a Supernova, but this one is a Supernova type. So being able to put this Luffy into the top of our life is very good. But it's just better Makino at the end of the day, right? Makino is, there's sometimes where you can find the card you need to in your life, but Beige being able to set up your 5-drop Luffy is just really good for being able to use your 2-drop to go through your combos and stuff. So and the fact that it's just a 1 cost, right? Like this is a solid card that incidentally helps out the archetype. I think this is obviously better for like yellow Supernova stuff in general, but it has been like really, really strong. So I don't have much more to say about this deck, but we have been seeing this. We've been seeing Zeus added in OP11 as well, and then also we'll see if anything happens with Moria, since that's been a lot of talk with as well. And to wrap it up, we do have the Yellow Useless Kid deck, and this build is really interesting, where we're really focusing on the vanillas, since we can give these blockers, and they can be kind of a little rough to interact with a lot of decks. Specifically, like if you're playing against Doflamingo, a 5/7 blocker is tough to deal with because of that. We have a lot of access to healing with our Trafalgar Law. We also have our Useless Captain Kid, which is great for using some burn damage. And then we also have 10-drop Ace because we get to the late game pretty easily as well. So I think this is a really fun deck. It's interesting to see like an aggressive leaning yellow deck most of the time, because it's hard to see where the balance is for their mechanics and how they do burn damage and stuff. But I do think this is a moderately strong deck. It's one of my favorites to play, and I think there's some really cool interactions. It did give Yellow a lot of good cards, like just interesting cards that you read that you're like, oh, this is cool. I want to build a deck around it. So we have like X-Drake being able to rest something. We have like Zoro being able to get Rush. We also have our Basil Hawkins, which we don't get burn damage often, and this one seems like a pretty easy way to give burn damage. Obviously, if you're playing against blue, they can bypass the on-KO effect pretty easily, but this is a big threat for a lot of decks, and I think it's really, really interesting. So I don't have much more to say about this one. I think Yellow Kid is a great deck. I want to see what people are building in the next couple weeks, and I definitely will. I do expect this to top sometime in the meta. Especially, I don't think anything in yellow is really going to get hit either, so it can definitely take some benefits off a restrictionless change too. So, but that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed my rambling here while I'm a little bit exhausted from being jet lagged in Japan. But I'm really, really looking forward to it. Also, just being able to play in Japan and seeing players out here, and obviously they're still they're on OP11, right? They're not on OP10 at all, but it's really, really cool to see how metas develop, how they change. And which also is why I'm really excited for the global release sometime next year, where we're going to be synced up for it too. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Let me know what you guys are looking forward to playing in OP10, and I'll catch you all next time.